Welcome to the Veteran Action Update Brief. I'm Mark Lucas, the founder of Veteran Action. Our guest is Dan Caldwell. Dan is a great friend of mine. We served together at Concerned Veterans for America. And Dan is a big reason why President Trump was able to pass two of the most historic reforms at the VA in his first term. That first bill was the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act of 2017. And the second bill was the Mission Act, which would give veterans choice in their health care. Dan was a senior advisor at the Department of Defense, and he was recently featured on Tucker Carlson. Dan is a foreign policy expert. So Dan, can you walk us through what's going on in Iran?
So Mark, thank you so much for having me on. It's good to join you. You've been such a great friend to me, and I'm really excited what you're doing with Veteran Action. So here's the first thing I gotta say to everybody listening to this, is that you have to be very wary of trusting any initial reports that you're seeing out of Iran or Israel. Both the Iranian and Israeli government are conducting information operations, something which I know that you know about, having been an officer in the Army. It's natural, governments engaged in military actions do this all the time, and they're trying to advance their own narratives. They're trying to trick the other side, and some of the mediums they use to do that are channels like X and Getter and Truth Social and other places where sometimes you can get great open source information and learn a lot about what's going on, but still there's a lot of misinformation going on. In addition, there's still a lot that we don't know about what happened last night in Iran, and as we're recording this right now, there's an ongoing Iranian missile attack against Israel. All that said, though, I think we can safely say a few things. First, Israel's attack against Iran last night was not just against their nuclear sites. It was against Iranians' military leadership in Tehran, their senior nuclear scientists also in Tehran, and ballistic missile and air defense sites. Second, it is pretty clear that Israel was successful in eliminating large parts of the Iranian higher military command. Israel is very good at this, as we saw in their attacks against Hezbollah last year and in their ability to eliminate leaders of Hamas. However, last night, Iran was able to launch 100 drones at Israel, most of which were shot down, if not all. And as I said, there is an ongoing missile attack against Israel, and it includes at least 100 Iranian ballistic missiles. So that shows that Iran still maintains significant offensive capability. So what comes next? It is really impossible to say. There's a lot of unknowns in war. But I think we can assume that Iran and Israel are going to continue to strike and counterstrike each other, at least for the next few days.
Dan, we both served in combat during the global war on terror. Veteran Action has made it very clear that we do not support another forever war. Dan, can you tell us why the United States should stay out of this war?
So I think it's important to remember that our foreign policy in the Middle East over the last 24 years has been a disaster. It's been a disaster for the United States. It's been a disaster for the people in the Middle East. And I think it's been a disaster for Israel. Israel, I think, is less safe because of our foreign policy in the Middle East. It has cost us, the United States, thousands of lives, trillions of dollars, destabilized the region, and distracted us from more urgent priorities at home, like our border, and in other parts of the world, mainly in the Pacific, where China is truly a rising threat. And I would note that one reason why Iran has so many resources to build all these advanced missiles, to really invest in proxies like Hezbollah and the militias in Iraq, which are loyal to them, the Popular Mobilization Forces, and also to develop a nuclear program, is because we removed one of the main checks against their power in the region, Saddam Hussein. So a lot of the current strength that Iran has had, and even though they've taken some setbacks the last year or so, they're still a very powerful country, and that is in large part because of our own dumb foreign policy decisions. So with all that in mind, considering what we're dealing with here at home, with the challenges we have with the Pacific, with the state of our military, which has been worn down by 20 plus years of war, with our stockpiles drained as a result of our largely unconditional support of Ukraine, it is really clear the last thing we need is another major war in the Middle East. I think it benefits China. It distracts us again from securing our border, investing in things we need to invest at here at home. And it also is going to make it harder for people like Dan Driscoll, the Secretary of the Army, to execute the Army transformation. It's going to be harder to rebuild our Navy, which Secretary Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy, is trying to do. And it's going to be a distraction from some of the great reforms that the team at the Department of Defense are trying to do. So I really hope that the United States does not get sucked into a major war. And President Trump, last night and again this morning, even though he was praising the success of the Israeli attacks, was making it clear he wants to pursue diplomacy. He doesn't want to see another major war. And I hope that he can really focus on de-escalating and finding some off-ramps for us, for Iran and Israel. It's not going to be easy, but that I think is what him and his team are looking at doing right now.
You brought up a great point with President Trump. I witnessed his ability to exert diplomacy on the Korean Peninsula. He was really able to de-escalate that situation with Kim Jong-un. In fact, the South Korean president at the time, President Moon Jae-in, said that President Trump deserved to win the Nobel Peace Prize. So how can President Trump use his leverage to negotiate peace in Iran?
So I have to be very honest. I think that in the short term and probably the medium term, diplomacy is going to become harder, not easier. But that doesn't mean that there is no more opportunities for diplomacy ever, and that the only solution is a full-on war with Iran. And I would note too is that really the only way to ensure that Iran does not get a nuclear bomb, short of invading and occupying the country and doing another regime change war, is through diplomacy. The reality is that even in the best of circumstances, using airstrikes and sabotage, you're never really going to truly be able to destroy the Iranian nuclear program because it's been hardened up, and you'll still have a regime that will want to pursue a nuclear weapon and probably feels like they need to pursue it even more now after these strikes. So even though it's going to be harder, and this might sound counterintuitive, is that really is the only true option in the longer term to stop Iran from getting a nuclear bomb without a full-on large-scale war against Iran. We have to pursue diplomacy, and I was very happy to see that's what President Trump says he wants to do. But we have to be honest, is that because of what happened last night, I think it's going to get a lot more difficult.
And Dan, you as a former Marine who's been in combat, you understand war better than most people. So I want to thank you for you being an advocate for peace and trying to help this situation with Iran. You've been a thought leader on restraint for years. And thank you for joining the Veteran Action Update Brief.
Mark, thank you for having me again.